The PERM labor certification job description is so critical to the PERM labor certification application, which is the first in 3 major steps for the employment-based green card process. And this job description forms the foundation for the rest of the case and can make or break a case. So 5 tips for drafting this job description. Number 1, be accurate and truthful. Of course, the information needs to be accurate and needs to be consistent with what the position actually requires. You need to consider what you as the company have previously required in job postings for this position or for similar positions. You need to think about what the requirements other employees have had before they've joined that are critical for the position. And if the foreign national who is benefiting from this labor certification process, if they're the beneficiary, if they are in H-1B status, we need to make sure that the requirements, the job description, the job title, all of that is consistent with what is in the H-1B petition if we're filing for the same position. Tip number 2, we are talking about minimum requirements. So it's very common in recruiting to have preferences, ideals, nice to haves, that type of thing. Absolutely, that's normal. I do that too in our job postings. But for the PERM labor certification, we're really focusing on what are the true minimum requirements required for a person to be able to do this job. So we're not looking at, or we're not really including in the job description, these things like it's nice to have a master's degree, or ideally the person would have 5 years of experience. We're looking at what are the true minimum requirements for the position. Tip number 3, make sure that the job duties and the experience and education required are clear and specific. That means that we're not giving a range of experience, years of experience required. So we're not giving 2 to 4 years experience as a software developer, for example. We're saying 2 years of experience, if that's the minimum. We need to say, indicate exactly what the job requires in terms of education. So we wouldn't say a bachelor's degree or master's degree in data science, for example. If you're giving that, then the minimum requirement is a bachelor's degree. And we have to be very clear and specific about that. We also want to make sure that the job duties are very clear and specific and that they're drafted accurately and strategically to make sure that the Department of Labor, to the extent possible, that we can control this, matches it up with the SOC code or standard occupational code that we want or that we envision, because that also will dictate what the required wage will be. Tip number 4, we cannot tailor the requirements for the position to what the foreign national actually has. A lot of times we'll get requirements back from an employer and we look at it and it's what the foreign national has right now. That may be the case. They may or have right now exactly what was required for the position. And that's an okay starting point, but we also need to consider these other factors that I've talked about, such as what have you required before? What is actually preferred versus what is the actual minimum requirement for the position. We also want to be careful about tailoring because we can't tailor the position to exactly what the foreign national has. Department of Labor will take notice of that and they don't love that at all. So that's a risk. Tip number 5, think about the reasons that you as the employer might disqualify someone for the position. So let's say that you go through this PERM application process, the preparation process, you do all of the required recruitment, you have a set of resumes to review. Why would you reject a person for this position? So for example, if we're talking about a software developer position and the position requires that a person have experience with Java, if that's not built into the requirements for the position, that's not a reason that we can use to exclude a person. Or if they have to have experience in cloud computing, for example, then unless that's built into the requirements of the position, we can't use that as a reason to reject a person. Likewise, for degree requirements, to use another industry example, if the position requires a degree in education with a concentration in educational psychology, that's great. As long as that's the true position requirement, absolutely. But again, that has to be indicated in all of the requirements that we set forth at the very beginning of the process. There are lots of other tips that I could give you. This is a very complex process. It's important that you work with an experienced immigration attorney to help you navigate this process to make sure that you are approaching this in a very strategic and intentional way to reduce the road bumps that you're going to experience along the way, which you will, even if you work with someone who has lots of experience. It is a very complex process, but we can help you navigate those and get through the process as successfully as possible. My name is Emily Sumner with Sumner Immigration Law. We specialize in this type of case and other employment and family-based immigration law, and we would love to help you. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to our channel and follow along for more tips in the future. Until next time, I'm Emily Sumner.